Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Teaching Tax Flow podcast, episode 104 today. We are going to look at comparing banks and credit unions, what the differences are, what the similarities are. I have more questions than answers going into this, so before we jump into it, let's take a brief moment and thank our episode sponsor.
Are you leaving money on the table? Are you an accredited investor seeking new and exciting investment opportunities? Look no further than Integrated Investment Group, your trusted partner in financial success. At IIG, the focus is on delivering exclusive investment options tailored to your unique needs and goals. Contact them today and let their expert team guide you toward your financial aspirations. Wondering if you qualify as an accredited investor? Visit teachingtaxflow.com/IIG to find out and take the first step towards a brighter financial future. Integrated Investment Group. Your path to financial success begins here. Securities offered through Cabin Securities. Member FINRA SIPC.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Teaching Tax Flow podcast. I know this is a topic that people want to hear because we've heard it over about the past 2 years. So I know we're into the triple digits of this podcast. And whether you are self-employed, you're a real estate investor, somebody that might be venturing down that path of being self-employed, or heck, you just have a bank versus credit union question, you're in the best place. And I say that not only because I like to toot our own horn here at Teaching Tax Flow, but we also, let's just say birds of the feather flock together. We think we're kind of cool, so we hang out with cool, smarter, better looking people. And Chris, I guess welcome back to your own show for once. I always got to, welcome you back to your own party.
Well, it's great to be back. This is a topic that I've been wanting to do. We have a tracking sheet or a spreadsheet that, of course, your dad would be proud of our spreadsheet. But sorry, it's not on the desktop. It is a cloud-based spreadsheet. So I don't know if your dad would appreciate that. Don't know if he's graduated there. And we always either have to throw one of our dads under the bus. We throw the state of California there. There's our usual suspects. However, this has been a topic that has been on the sheet for like 6 months, and we've just been waiting for the right person to come on the show and talk us through this, because banks and credit unions, I'm sure, have some similarities, but definitely some differences. And I want to talk through those with an expert. Also, when is it best to move towards one or the other? And what are the differences? What are the similarities? And what should someone look for specifically? Because there are a lot of credit unions I know that are really geared towards certain industries, certain geographic locations, sometimes nationalities, ethnicities. This is a really exciting and intriguing topic that really applies to everybody. Sometimes our topics apply to a certain segment of the audience, but ultimately, we all need in the United States economic system here is some type of financial institution to help us do business. So I'm excited about this, John.
Yeah, and Chris, when we thought of this topic, I had to go back through my proverbial Rolodex a little bit and think like, all right, who knows the most about this? And somebody that actually knows about it, that works in the industry, hence Chrissy Siders. Chrissy, welcome. I should say welcome to the Teaching Tax Flow party. How are you?
Thanks for inviting me. I was so excited.
It's either, you're either really excited or you're just like, what in the world did I get roped into to talk to these turkeys about?
I'm excited. I'm good.
While we have you on here, we already hit the record button, so you can't bail yet. Unless anybody's listening to this, all of a sudden everybody disappears. It's because Chrissy literally disconnected the internet and she says, you know what, I'm out of here.
Right. I tried to make my computer not work, but you roped me in with my phone, so...
You failed. See, and speaking of technology, right? So we're about to talk. Obviously, tech's going to be a part of this conversation. Again, Chris, I know you said you're super excited about it. I am, because again, I don't even have many answers to this. I did make the confession to Chrissy, just so everybody knows before this, that I am still with a bank. So if by the end of this podcast she somehow converts me, she has done very well. So that being said, Chrissy, why don't we actually start off a little bit so people know really why you're joining us, and then maybe your background, where you're at now. I know you guys have gone through a little bit of a transition or an acquisition, it sounded like, over the past couple of years at True as well. So give us kind of your story as well as what you guys are up to over there.
Yeah, so I actually started in the credit union industry in 1998. I was going to college at Michigan State University. Go Green. And
So white. Oh, John, you finally got the right guests on
I
here.
know,
Darn it.
I know.
I didn't know that.
I have to tell you, in it, once I know you're going to do this podcast and then follow all of our social medias, you're going to realize that one of the favorite people in the teaching tax law community is our dog Sparty.
Oh,
Love that. She is a doll. So sorry, didn't mean to sidetrack it.
You're good. You're good. I thought I was going to go in a totally different career, following a totally different career path. I was working at the credit union because I was 20 years old, newly married, and needed a job. And fell in love with the industry. I am admittedly biased towards the credit union industry. I grew up in it. I drank the Kool-Aid very young. But I still think that also gives me the beautiful benefit of understanding the industry to its fullest. Started as that part-time teller, moved into various positions, graduated with a college degree, moved into what's called really the risk management space, which is compliance, fraud, security, internal audit. Worked in that for about 15 years or so probably before I became president and CEO in 2017, which is the position that I'm in today. I'm at a credit union named True Community Credit Union with our headquarters in Jackson, Michigan. But John, to your point, we've undergone a lot of change over the last 7 years when I became CEO. We've actually merged twice with two different credit unions to generate some expansion for us. We also changed our charter. So we were a federally chartered credit union and we're now a state chartered credit union. And we've also, to your point about technology, implemented a number of technology enhancements at our organization as well, just to be able to serve our members better. So we are every new employee that comes in, I tell them that we are a growth-minded organization and that we are going to work very hard to grow to serve the members in the Michigan community. So that's my story. That's how I got here. Again, unashamedly biased towards the industry, but I will try to be as unbiased in my answers as I can be.
Hey, you know what? It's kind of like asking, well, we already said it, his favorite school. Know what? If I would have known you were a state fan, we would have completely changed this topic.
No.
It's speaking of like internet.
I was even smarter than you originally thought that I was.
Careful. I'm close to Ann Arbor where I'm at right now. We don't want, that last thing I need some Wolverine fan blowing through my window. So obviously we have experience in this industry. So we get, a lot of the conversations with me, Chris, other partners we have, other CPAs, just random taxpayers. Down to people talking about getting auto loans, right? So maybe let's start there too. So how does really in your mind, obviously being biased towards credit unions, which is great because you know more about it than any of us all put together. So really what are the big differences generally speaking? I know you guys are really very tech savvy and I know so I know you guys focus a lot more, and I'm not going to say any other specific credit unions, but you guys do a very, very good job on almost taking community engagement to a whole nother level. Yeah. It's not like you guys just sponsor a float in a parade and, you give your thumbs up and that's all you do. You do a ton more. But let's talk about that between banks and credit unions. So what's the biggest kind of...
Well, let me take you back to the basics first, because I actually think that's where it's probably most important that you understand there are some inherent differences that are just there between credit unions and banks and the structure. And neither, I am totally biased towards the credit union structure, but there are some amazing small community banks, right? And so, really, the biggest thing is that we are run by a volunteer board of directors. Okay, so our board of directors gets paid zero, zilch, nothing. They come to monthly board meetings. They govern the credit union. They are ultimately who the members are accountable to. But our board members are wholly volunteer and they are elected by the membership of the credit union. So we have 80,000 members at the credit union. As long as you have $5 in your account, everybody is the same dollar amount, makes you the same equal weight in a credit union. So that's different, right? With banks, you have shareholders. The more shares you own, the more ownership control that you have in the organization. It's just a different structure, right? So our board of directors is actually nominated or actually voted for by the membership. So as long as you have that par value, that $5 in the credit union, you get to vote for the board members. Very different than a bank structure, right? A bank structure is based more on you buy shares, right? You have some controlling interest in the company. You gain the profit from, the bank. That is just an inherent difference in our structure. Credit unions are also designed as cooperatives. And the whole goal is really to use the savings, the shares, the deposits of our members to turn around and lend them out to our members, to invest them, to generate additional product services, people for our members. And that's just a little bit different in structure as well. And then, I think that community impact, I love that you bring that up, because this is actually where there's a similarity and a difference. So I don't believe that anyone gets up in the morning and doesn't say, I want to do good, be good, I want to serve people well. And I believe a bank and a credit union alike want to do that. One of the differences is that it's inherent in our DNA and it's inherent in our business model, being cooperatives and being in the community. And there is no regulatory requirement that we give to the community or have a certain amount of dollars, right, invest in the community, because it is just naturally part of us. And so you won't find a credit union that isn't just deeply ingrained in their community. Banks have something called, CRA, Community Reinvestment Act. And so that does have some requirements, for them to give a certain amount of dollars, grant a certain amount of dollars, do certain things in certain industries. And so that's where I said there's similarities, but there's differences. For credit unions, it is just baked into who we are. And to your point, John, we don't just show up and say, hey, we're going to put a float in. We give our dollars, we give our time, we give our people. We just sponsored actually a Hispanic Heritage Festival in the Jackson area. We gave away $20,000 in scholarships. We didn't just say, hey, here's a booth, here's just like, some food, some sponsorship. We actually gave $20,000, which means that our people have to vet the applicants. They have to engage with others in the community. And we did that actually with several. We did that with Juneteenth as well. You'll see us sponsoring businesses, or you'll see us sponsoring and showing up at various things that each community does in our area. And I'm not saying that banks don't do that. I'm just saying that is absolutely inherent in who we are. And, I have actually an employee whose title is Chief Community Impact Officer. She is that is her role, is how do we impact the lives of the people that we serve and bring substantial impact to their lives. So, that definitely is a difference there.
So, no, that's a great point. So, obviously, ownership and structure of bank is a little bit different. From my understanding, it's more of a for-profit organization, where credit unions are non-for-profit, or non-profit organizations. Does that make So I love that you asked that question, because sometimes people get this mixed up, and then this is where I think people think credit unions are trying to pull one over on somebody. We are not for-profit. We are not nonprofits, right? Nonprofits are kind of running like a zero-based budget, right? Right.
We are not for-profit organizations, so we don't operate with the intent to make some huge profit, some large margin, right? That's just not our intent. And you actually can see that if you break the numbers down. You can see the profit margins of banks and credit unions. Now, where you can see some blurring maybe is a little bit in some of the smaller community banks, and credit unions might be, more similar in that intent. But credit unions are absolutely not for-profit, and banks are absolutely for-profit. Again, just a structure difference.
Right. And I love that you mentioned, your board of directors, thinking about credit unions and banks in general. Can you kind of touch on the differences between eligibility of being a part of the organization as a customer or client, and then also maybe some of the regulatory and insurance, because we know about FDIC, but not a lot of people know that credit unions also have some insurance around their deposits.
Yeah, I love that question. So, this is absolutely an area where there are similarities again, but just differences with who owns it, or who owns the insurance portion. So while banks, you're federally insured to at least $250,000, and the FDIC is the one who does that portion. Likewise, on the credit union side, most are insured through the National Credit Union Administration, or what's called the National Credit Union Share Insurance Fund. And again, it's to at least $250,000. Now, we actually at True offer an extension to that even, and we add additional insurance for our members. That is just something that, the credit union purchases, the credit union pays for, but it's something that's very important for us, that they people would certainly understand that piece. So, yeah, we are, your money is just as safe in a credit union as it is in a bank, and we have those same requirements to be insured. We can't not be insured. Now, there are some states that allow private insurance. But you are required to be insured in the state of Michigan. You have to be part of the National Credit Union Share Insurance Fund. And then about membership. So, you could walk into any bank today and you could open an account at any bank today. No qualifications, you just could open an account. With credit unions, there is a difference. You do have to qualify for membership. And so each credit union is set up differently. There are multiple common bond credit unions. There are single source credit unions. But you do have to qualify. So, for example, for our credit union, we used to be a federally chartered credit union, and you had to belong to one of about 400 different businesses in order to be, a member. That's one of the things that we do when we go into a new community. John experiences a little bit with us is, you grow in that community, you make connections, and then you offer up your services as a credit union to those in that community. Now, we switched to a state chartered credit union in 2020, which gave us, it's really kind of interesting. It gave us the opportunity to expand, even though it looks like it's more limited. So when we were federal, we could have expanded maybe a little bit more outside the state of Michigan. And now that we're a state chartered credit union, you can live, work, worship, or go to school in the entire state of Michigan, and you can be eligible for membership at True. So definite differences there. There are eligibility requirements with credit unions, and there are not with banks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was wondering about that state versus federal charter, and that's very interesting, and a really neat strategic move for you guys, because you have tons of locations, specifically all through kind of southeast to south central, Michigan. Mm-hmm. And that just always it was kind of a question for, a question that I always had. Obviously, it seems like credit unions in general are a little more involved with their microeconomies. Sometime you kind of touch on the differences in technology. I know your credit union specifically is very forward thinking on technology. I'm impressed that you have a lot of outreach as far as education, even for kids. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool, and we'll leave all that in the show notes as well. But one of the concerns sometimes is that someone might feel as a bank might have more technological resources. You have a larger credit union, in my opinion. 80,000 members is a significant amount. But you got to touch on that. Any other differences or similarities in the technology piece?
I think what's interesting is I think we might be in the top 25 of credit unions in Michigan. There are credit unions that are way larger than us. Way larger than us. Sorry. And so, we're a mid-sized credit union for sure. I am wholly biased about our financial education program. We run student-run credit union programs in all of the school districts in the Jackson County area. All those, we kind of have 13 connected community schools, plus additional programs where the students actually run the credit union. And so we teach financial education and financial wellness from a very, very, very young age. That I could be on a soapbox for an hour about why that's critical to the success of adults when they get older, both socially, emotionally, physically, spiritually. That you've got to kind of understand the financial well-being of people. But from a technology perspective, it's interesting to me that there really is, I think, a misnomer that credit unions may not invest in technology as much as other financial institutions. I just call bull on that. We have had actually a massive investment in technology over the last 7 years. We changed our core processing system that we're using to be quicker, to be more agile, to be able to program things ourselves. We've hired people to be able to program our systems. We've switched our drive-thrus over to what are called interactive teller machines, where they're still a human. I promise they're still there. They're just in the window, of the box of the machine. We've changed our digital app to be better. We're in the middle of a card conversion, updating to contactless and digital issuance and all of those things. And here's what's so important about technology in our industry. It is moving at Mach speed. And if you do not keep up with it, you will lose the race as a financial institution, bank or credit union alike. So what that does is it makes it a really tricky endeavor for you to figure out how do you strategically grow your business while still investing a lot in technology. That is one of the beauties of being not-for-profit. You will take time to do the investments because the bottom line isn't nearly as important. You want to make money, right? Because your examiners will be upset if you don't. But you don't need to make a gigantic amount, right? You can turn around and invest those dollars back for your members. And then the only other piece I would say about technology is, we're balancing the spectrum of generations, right? So, I have a 23-year-old and a 21-year-old who really just want to do everything on their phones, right? I had a dad, he's passed away, but when he was alive, he wouldn't even go through a drive-through at McDonald's, right? So, I mean, you're trying to handle the generational pieces of people with technology, with branches, with your infrastructure. But technology, I always say this, I've been at the credit union 26 and a half years, and there are departments and processes and products that we don't have today, just 25 years later, because they're no longer wanted or needed with the generation that is using them today. And so if we don't continue to move, with that's going to be critical to our success. And it's interesting you're asking about banks and credit unions, because I'll give you a plug for one additional podcast you might want to have, and it's about fintechs. So with the fintechs, here's the big thing. There are fintechs who are running a business with no brick and mortar, very little people. They don't have to have all of the technology pieces that we have. They don't have to have all the branch network that we have. They don't have to have all the expenses that we have. We are competing with them, candidly, probably even more than I'm competing with other financial institutions, right? And so if you dug into fintechs and the value of, do you compete with fintechs or do you partner with fintechs as a financial institution, you would probably have a fascinating conversation, with somebody who knows even more than I do about it. But that is where the market is today, is in the fintechs. I'm going to let all the other really smart people develop the products, and then I'm going to partner with them to deliver them to my members. But that's a technology piece that is so critical.
Mm-hmm. And Chrissy, it's almost like I remember, from my own experience, right? And this is, when I lived down south in South Carolina for 10 years and I was traveling along. We actually had one of our clients who were in Massachusetts that was a credit union. And I feel like during that time, this was probably about 10 years ago, it almost seemed like there was more of a divide, at least on the tech side, between credit unions and banks, because obviously they were just banks were just throwing money at things, it seemed like, and they were not trying to be the early adopters, if you will, but it seemed like they went through and figured out what people wanted and what they didn't want. And then credit unions now are, y'all are moving at the same pace, at least just from a consumer side. But a big question I have for you actually is thinking of it for like business loans, home loans, investors, et cetera, real estate investors. Is that application and kind of financing process very different? I know I hear a lot from individuals that go through a credit union and say it's fantastic. I feel like I have more of a partner that wants to work with me instead of just a yes, no binary, we want your money or get out of our door kind of relationship. Is that true to some extent?
Yeah, I mean, I would say again, that's inherent in who we are. And especially, I can speak to True specifically. We have a mission to cultivate legacy defining moments for the people and places that we serve for generations to come, and a vision to partner with you in writing a life story that stretches beyond your imagination. Both of those things, our mission and our vision, require us to dig deeper with the person in front of us, right? So you sit down in front of me. There's a great example. We had a member who walked in and they wanted a home and they would not qualify, right? After the economic crisis in 08, 09, the rules were they changed considerably. They're a little bit stringent in my opinion. And, they require very specific things and 8 underwriting factors, and the people didn't qualify, right? Now my employee could have left it there, which might happen in other financial institutions. But she didn't. She said, let's go through a plan for the next couple of years, and then we're going to get you into that home. And about 2 years later, those members came back and they got into a home that was even bigger and better than what they thought, and they were in a better financial situation. That's what it means to partner with someone to write a life story that stretches beyond their imagination. But you know what that requires? Commitment. It requires time and energy and commitment. And I'm biased again. I will wholly admit it, but I do not think that every financial institution does that. I think there is a difference inherent in that. Now, when you ask the question about is it easier, I think one thing that we do have to understand is, we have kind of a digital first mentality at True, where we want to make it easy for you to apply. We know that people are running from here to there and they do not have a lot of time, right? And so we do want to make that first process really quick for you. So we have invested in technology for application quickness and applying and getting that first, app over to us. Then we'll lean into some of those other conversations. So I would say it's maybe a little bit of a hybrid model at our credit union is how do we serve you up quickly? but also how do we dig deeper with you to really make sure we can meet your needs the best that we can. And understand, that's why it says to write a life story that stretches beyond your imagination, is every single person's life story is different. Every small business is different. Every large business is different. Each individual human is different. And so we can't cookie cutter, approach to everybody. So yeah, I would absolutely agree with that.
You kind of touched on, I've got to kind of wrap things up, I have a couple questions just on market segments as far as bank and credit union, because I just feel like, I've been in business over 22 years. So I feel like now credit unions are more business friendly, where traditionally you thought credit unions kind of for your personal, maybe you're in a certain union and you work in that or a community. So what are you seeing? And you did mention the generational things. I wanted to retouch on the generational differences, maybe the business versus personal differences. And then it seems like credit unions might have the ability to be a little more nimble as far as working specifically with people in the cannabis industry, where federal banks seemingly cannot. So, can you touch on, I know I just threw three things at you, but I think that's a great place to.
Yeah, remind me of them as we go if I miss.
Yeah, please.
Let me just.
So generational differences between what you're seeing in banks versus credit unions as far as the avatars you're serving more, and then businesses, and then cannabis industry.
Yeah. Let me answer first with this. I kind of want to give you this large kind of contextual umbrella to your observation. And first and foremost, it goes back to the design of banks and credit unions. So one of the things you have to remember is that credit unions can't raise capital the way that banks can raise capital, right? So banks can go out and issue more stock, and that raises their capital. Credit unions cannot. We cannot, right? We don't have stock. We don't have shareholders like that, right? The only way that we generate and increase our capital is by our net income and booking those dollars over to our reserves, right? Now, I just got done telling you we are not for profit, so we're not like banking $1 bazillion each year, right? So it's a really slow growth to that. But what you have seen is actually some of what you guys have said is that people have got wind of how great credit unions are. And so more membership growth is happening. More people are getting loans and saving at credit unions. And so just naturally, we're seeing this growth in our market, which is super cool, which leads us to be able to take more risk and really go into some of those areas that you described. So, the generational differences, they're one of my favorite things because I feel like I'm a 47-year-old woman who really behaves like a 20-year-old from a banking perspective, right? I don't really want to go downstairs to the teller line. I want to do it all on my phone. Like I don't want to talk to a human. I just want to chat with a human, those types of things, right? And so there certainly is that piece where we're doing a lot of that investment in that space. I want to hit on the small business piece because one of the things we've been doing at True is not just figuring out how we meet small business needs, but actually understanding systemic issues to things like minority-owned businesses or Black-owned businesses and what their perception is of the lack of access to capital for them. I held a kind of a question and answer session with a bunch of Black-owned businesses in our area a couple of years ago to seek to understand, why don't they feel comfortable walking into our credit union or any financial institution, and maybe they're going to those other types of lenders that are not healthy for them, right? But it's the best, safest way for them to get that. And so, again, that's about risk taking. Getting there, understanding the questions, what is it that we can do, where can we take the risk, and how can we serve you better? But that's, again, the credit union difference of learning more about the person and the human, right? And then lastly, you asked about cannabis banking. Gosh, this has been all over the place, right? I mean, we've been waiting for them to pass a rule federally about this to give us a safe harbor for, I don't know, it's like the lady from Titanic, like 84 years, right?
Yeah.
And they have not. But they have, obviously, with it being legal in the state of Michigan now, there's a lot of credit unions and banks that are just taking the risk and saying, listen, we're going to set up a really great program that's safe. What's happening is these individuals are unbanked. And when you are unbanked and you are rolling, no pun intended, that amount of cash, right? And it's not sitting in a financial institution, that's dangerous, right? And so, it makes so much more sense to me to be able to give them access to financial services. And so we're currently running a program, with an individual, a cannabis company, to see how it works and see how our examiners take it and to make sure we mitigate the risk and we cover it. But all of those things that you asked about, the industry itself had to get to a spot where it could grow and sustain risk in a way that we wouldn't go under, should we
Right.
put too much risk in a certain area. And so that's why you're seeing, credit unions being able to step more into that space, is that people have gotten wind of how amazing our industry is. And they're investing in us, right, through accounts and loans.
Well, I think I would talk about laying out the differences, but similarities in some of it too. It's funny. Chris has seen these come up a lot. As we're going through our conversation, here I am, some of it looks like my 3-year-old trying to draw me a picture of a happy face, but I'm writing out all my sticky notes and I tend to stick them all over the wall. It's funny because I don't really have as many questions as I thought I would after the fact, because I think the biggest thing that I'm taking away from this, right, is almost, Chrissy, how we met. I mean, God, that was 2018. So almost 6 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And I remember the first interaction I had with somebody from y'all's company is they were literally just out in the community. I had no idea who they were, what they did. They just kept showing up. And it's nice to see when you guys enter a new market, because it was a new geographic market at that time, that truly is how you guys operate. And I hear that more about credit unions. And that's why I'll really pose that question about just the process and working together. And Chris, you had asked too about membership. And I take it back to your response a little bit earlier on, is it's in that DNA where, I mean, it is what it is, right? You guys are more there to serve the community versus, reporting to shareholders on, a much higher level. Because obviously if you own 10% of a larger institution, which is a lot because they're a hugest, you kind of want your money back.
Absolutely.
You're there with intention. You don't really care about what they do, figuratively speaking.
Right.
But it is really good to see it. So it's, kind of putting your money where your mouth is, literally. But that,
absolutely.
Just the engagement. And, why we thought of this topic, Chris, kind of circling back to that before we do wrap, is, we, within Teaching Tax Flow, we meet so many different people, the individual taxpayers, as I mentioned, business owners, people thinking about taking that plunge, real estate investors, you name it, we've talked to them in some way, shape, or form. And there's also, which is interesting, there was so much interest in just this conversation and this topic with other CPAs at all the conferences that me and Chris have gone to. So I think it's so good to have this. It's so good to lay it out. And again, not to make this a commercial about you guys, but how many branches and locations do you guys have? Because I think you operated a couple of them in schools too.
So
if I remember right.
We operate in about 30 schools where we have student-run credit unions. And then we have 15 branches that serve members all the way down I-94 in Michigan, basically from Parma to Dearborn. And so, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, so now we have a very, very rural area, right? I mean, Parma is, Parma-tucky is what we call it often. And then Dearborn is such a beautifully diverse community of Arab American, population, as well as if you kind of just go around the corner, we've got a great Hispanic population. Their needs are so different than the people in Parma. And that is a differentiating factor. Is, we're having conversations about, making sure that we have loans for quinceañeras, or understanding the Islamic faith and the fact that, there's rules with regards to loans and interest and those types of things, because that person that's a member of our credit union is an owner of our credit union, whether they have $5 in our credit union or $5 million in our credit union. And so they're the same, the exact same. And we're just trying to meet them and meet their needs through our products, our services, our people, and impact them the best that we can. And so that's a big differentiating factor, certainly, between our industry.
Awesome. Well, I love it. Well, Chris, as I mentioned, I really don't have any other questions. What about you?
No, this has been really informative. We appreciate it. We encourage people to really dive into your own situation and see what is the best fit. And especially if you live in Michigan or work or worship in Michigan, we'll leave all Chrissy's information out on our show notes. But this has really been helpful, and we appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely, because I know you're at a conference, so we appreciate you taking the time. And either it's a really good conference, it's going good, or you're like, I need a break. So
no, it's good. It's good.
No, but we love the conversation, and again, thank you for joining us. And we'll definitely have another discussion on this too, because I'm sure it'll be like everything else. I think of questions after the fact. But as I always like to close this out with, for everybody that's listening or watching, we will see you back here again next week roughly the same time, completely different topic here on the Teaching Tax Flow podcast.
The content provided is for educational purposes only. We encourage you to seek personalized investment advice from your financial professional. For all tax and legal advice, please consult your CPA or attorney. Investment advisory services are offered through Cabin Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cabin Securities, a registered broker-dealer. The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer of securities. Offerings can only be made through an offering memorandum, and you should carefully examine the risk factors and other information contained in the memorandum.